I'm happy to be here at TEDx on this red dot. It's so adorable. It's sort of like a TEDx bindi. Take my wife, please. I can say that because of gay marriage. Everybody has caught the mad vow disease. But oh my God, this really wasn't the way I was going to start this whole thing. I wanted to start with recalculating. I really wanted to start by telling you a story. And here's the story. It's about a friend of mine. I'll call her Brenda, because that's actually her name. And she seems to respond well to it. And she was in the market for a used car. So she sees an ad in the paper. It says, 2012, Mercedes-Benz, $85. So she calls the number, and the woman answers, and Brenda says, is the $85 a typo? And the woman said, no, it's $85. So Brenda goes up to the house and sees the car, and there it is in the driveway, a Mercedes-Benz, 2012 Mercedes-Benz, a Sport de Coupe, suede roof, gunmetal gray. Awesome. So she goes to the door, and the woman answers, and she says, well, I'm here about the car. Is there a motor in it? And the woman goes, oh, yeah, take it out for a test drive. She takes it out for a test drive. It's awesome. Hums along. So Brenda goes back and says, well, if you're not kidding about the car, $85, I'll write you a check. And the woman said, I'm not kidding. So she writes this check for $85 and gives it to the woman. They exchange papers, and the woman is handing my friend the keys to the car when she says, wouldn't you like to know about this car? And Brenda said, yes. And the woman said, well, here's the deal. I'm 65 years old. My husband is 70. And last month, he left me for a 35-year-old woman. And 2 days ago, I got a text from him, and it said, I'm in Florida, need money, sell the car. I love that story. It's a very practical joke. But you know, for 32 years, I have been a lesbian feminist comic. I'm old school. That's 32 years ago, we identified that way. But I love to see Io and what's happened with those, because we were about fluidity, and here it is. But back to the story. The whole thing's on MapQuest, don't worry. I got a GPS once, and my girlfriend doesn't trust it. So you're driving along, and it says, take a left, and she goes, I don't think so. I don't know. We got off to the wrong start. We got one that was passive-aggressive. And so you'd be driving, and it would go, take a left, or you miss the turn. And be like, well, OK. But anyway, I'm back. So the story, I love the story. I was a lesbian feminist, a comic. I know a lot of you thought, why didn't I do that job? It was not on the 6th grade career day choice, I'll tell you. But I love my job. I've been doing it for 32 years. I've even been able to buy things. And I started in 1981. Now, if you remember, that was the same year that Pope John Paul, George Ringo started. And it was also the same year that Ronald Reagan started. So it was the Pope and Reagan. It was like forgive and forget. 2, 3, 4, good. Eve asked me to come. And it was but I called myself a feminist humorist, actually, and my friends all thought it was a sophisticated career death wish. But actually what I called myself was a humorist. It was a typo, okay? I was trying to type feminist and humorist, and it ran together. This was before the tyranny of spell check. And you know what I mean? And I just love the way it looked. I mean, it was humorist. It was about fuming and bursting into flames and light. And it was a great gimmick. It was an amazing gimmick. I can't tell you the absolute number of times that I did AM drive time talk radio with those disc jockeys who all had to talk to the little lady who called herself a feminist humorist. You know, and every interview would start with, call yourself a feminist humorist, isn't that an oxymoron? And I would always smile sweetly and say, well, you're half right. And you've got to remember, this was a time when some word went out that women's movement did not have a sense of humor, which really pissed me off because I just think women didn't trust humor. I mean, we knew whose butts had been the butts of the jokes. We knew that the joke had been on us, and back in those days, we called it patriarchy. I don't know, they're calling it, neoliberalism or heteronormativity, but whatever, it's still the same thing. And here's my theory about what actually happened was there was a guy in the living room and there were a bunch of women in the kitchen laughing their heads off, sliding down the refrigerator, hilarious, tears streaming down their face, and the guy felt left out. And he just said, well, women don't have a sense of humor, period. And it caught on, okay? That's my theory, and I'm sticking with it. But I think that one woman's conspiracy theory is often another man's history. Thank you. I got a million of them, but I really do. But, and before I started performing, I really had to come to terms with humor. I mean, I was always a funny little kid. How do I do it? I don't know. I was like, wisecracks would just bust out of my mouth, just fly out of my mouth. I loved sound effects. I was like a human sound effects machine. I loved puns. I was really, really funny. And I think a lot of it was about self-preservation because I had 3 brothers, I still do. And they all played football. So in the off season, it was like open season on me. And what I learned was if I could make them laugh really hard, they would become weak. And they wouldn't, I wouldn't like be in danger of getting a cross-body block at odd times. But I did learn when I was a little girl, that you couldn't joke up. You couldn't, I remember one time I was at Mass with my dad. I was tiny, and I actually leaned over to my dad and said, why is the priest wearing the dress? And he actually said to me, don't make light. So I learned very early that it's dangerous to make fun of authority figures, priests, whatever. And what I did, and I think a lot of us did, is I instead of going vertical, I went horizontal, and I made not that. That's actually later in the story, but if we have time, it's a short story. But anyway. But I learned to make fun of myself. That's what we did, and I learned how to make fun of my girlfriends. And I was very good at it, and I really should apologize to Joan Shapiro. I owe her amends, but I did learn about that really tedious binary between humorous and serious. I learned that, serious was really more serious, more truthful, more real. And humor was sort of trivial, trifling, and not quite truthful. The great poet, and we miss her still, June Jordan once said that there's power and there's point of view. And whoever has the power determines the point of view. And back then, men had the power. We're changing that, but men had the power, and it was their determination that men who tell jokes about women are funny. But women who tell jokes about men are anti-male. What? And I think it's the same old guys that said, men can only have the comedy shows at night, and the gals have to be on during the day. It's testosterone after 11. I don't know what it was. The ruling was, and estrogen during the day. But another conspiracy theory, and apparently I'm alone. But But I learned that, and I learned that there was really no place in a serious discussion of oppression or language or relationships for humor. And it was sort of always a dodge of kind of like, I'm just kidding. There was a disclaimer. It was something to hide behind a mask. And it did not look good for this young comedian coming up. But then I read another incredible poet, Muriel Rukeyser. And Muriel Rukeyser said, pay attention to what they tell you to forget. And she also said that when a woman begins to tell the truth of her life, the world can split open. And which I think are wisecracks. I think that's how it starts. We ask our own questions, WHYS, cracks, there you go. But you know, for 32 years, I've really been paying attention to humor and serious, most especially to the place between. There's a wonderful word in Hindi that's called rola, and it means laughing and crying at the same time. One word, we don't have it. It's a binary buster, it's an either or, you know, we get rid of that, it's a both and. That's the place that I've been thinking about a lot. So let me tell you about some of the things I've been thinking about laughing, and join me now in the journey. But first of all, I've been thinking about laughing because it is really great practice for being present. How many times have you had the experience of talking to somebody, trying to tell them a hilarious story, something that happened to you, and they just look at you blankly? And then you become frantic, and you start, you know, adding it on, and like, come on, come on, come on, and they're like, wah. And you finish, and they sort of go, and you're like, oh my God. And you say to them, well, I guess you had to be there. In laughing, you really have to be there. And when I came out, which was an experience I don't wish on anyone, but when I came out to a friend of mine, and this is what she said, actually said to me, well, you certainly have made a commitment to joy in your life. And I almost denied it. I really did. I was like, well, but then I thought, no, I have made a commitment to joy in my life. And she's not an easy woman to please. You know? But I've been thinking a lot about where that source of joy is a source where laughter comes from. It's also where good sex comes from, because for good sex, you really do have to be present, if you know what I'm saying. But apparently not. But no, you know. But, and you know, so I think that it's, actually I love the sound of women laughing together. Think about it. We rock back and forth. You gasp for air. You make sounds you wouldn't ordinarily make. And there's soft moaning after. And if you're lucky, your face hurts. Now, suddenly we're doing a TEDx rated talk. I don't know how it happened, but anyway. The other thing I've been thinking about is when that moment of laughing, people, there's a hint of how we can be together and work together. And I think that's what we're trying to think about. And let's go back to that joke, which is so weird because I never tell jokes in my show because I just hate the form. It's all, you know, up and down, stand up, you know, punchline, stand up, punchline. It's very male, you know, stand up, punchline. No, they don't call it stand-up comedy for nothing. But anyway, 2, 3, 4. But and it's a form. It's an old form, and it's based on power and who doesn't have it, you know. Or it's about. Is that really my time? 24 seconds left? Jesus. Okay. Sorry. Let's change the game clock. But it's about. But it's really about, you know, I'm thinking about the laughter that doesn't come from power, not the put down. That it's a kind of laughter that, you know, it comes from joy. And it comes from, it's a kind of laughter that is, I don't know what it is because I was worried about the time, but welcome to my world. But really, if you've made a commitment to joy in your life, and a lot of us have, then you are by definition committed to changing the world. And if you're committed to changing the world, as our speakers have shown, you've got to be ready to put your body on the line. And really, what better way to do it than through laughing together or sex? Thank you. But let's go back to the joke, because I do know where I'm going, but let's go back to the joke. Oh, you get older, gray, but let's go back to the joke. I tell the joke, I give you the punchline, and there's that delightful little nano pause, and then there's a burst of laughter. And it happens for all kinds of different reasons. Some hear the joke, it's like surprise. You're like, oh no, she didn't. You know, there are other people that there's a laughter of recognition, like, well, I wish I'd thought of that. But it's all for different reasons. So what's happened is that it is a one and a many at the same time, a singular and a plural at the same time. It's the essence of democracy. It's a state of grace, if you will, and I will, because I'm a faith-based comic. But And the last thing I've been thinking about, and thanks for listening, but the last thing I've been thinking about is really laughing is an amazing, powerful activist tool. It's an amazing thing. I mean, I've studied laughter and that outburst, that explosive. I mean, I study it. I'm like experiment. I was in I was in my tool shed the other day, big experimenter, and I was running an experiment. I like to think of myself as a humor physicist. Are there any physicists here before I go on? Because I read widely, but not deeply. But anyway, I was out there and I was trying to test the actual propulsive possibilities of an outburst of laughter to move immovable objects. It was an amazing experiment. I was just using a little ordinary tap water, some tubing around the house. I mean, you know, don't try it at home. That's all I'll say. But I had a terrible accident the other day. I was I was using the juicer. We got a new juicer. It's like an atomic juicer. The centrifugal force is amazing. And I was doing an experiment with it. And by mistake, I accidentally discovered the God particle. Okay, I know. Here's the weird thing, though. Under the microscope, it looked like a tiny blue M&M. Isn't that weird? But anyway, so I've studied it, and what I've been finding about laughter is, yes, there is that explosive, cathartic release that's so pleasurable. It's a relief to laugh. But I've found that all that energy is not dissipated. Wait, there is more. Laughing is dangerous and disruptive. I mean, Aristotle's comedies were destroyed. They didn't destroy the tragedies. You know, and so here's something I want you to try this experiment. You can try it at home, you can try it at work, wherever lies are sold. But so here, somebody's telling you the biggest pile of pookie you've ever heard, and you just listen attentively, and then do this. Oh my God, oh my God, you mean it. And they'll never say those things again with any degree of confidence. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.